Hey everybody, it's great to be back after a couple of weeks off. So glad that you could join me this evening. In today's live show, I'm going to be talking about how to strategically solve some problems with education technology. So, we're going to really be focused on taking a goals first approach to how we might choose some programs and some instructional strategies in order to deal with some issues that are coming up. And before we get started, just a reminder that I do have this live show every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I know I've been getting some requests as well to have the show at another time. I have heard those and I'm considering some options. So thanks if you've contacted me about that. And I also just want to let everybody know, of course, that next week I'll be taking the Thursday off for the live show because of Thanksgiving, and just wish everybody a happy holiday and that everybody stays safe out there. And I did also just want to let everybody know that if you are a school leader, and so that could mean an instructional coach, assistant principal, principal, department chair, and you are implementing a strategic technology integration plan for your school, I'd love to talk with you. And so I've included a link to a new website that I put up called newedtechschool.com. And that's going to be in the video description. Also put it in a pinned comment. And I'm going to drop it here in the chat as well. If you're interested in booking a call with me, I'd love to talk with you. Like I mentioned, today we are going to be talking about strategic problem solving with education technology. So it's going to be a little bit of a different show in the sense that I'm not really going to be showing programs in today's show. Instead, I'm going to be focused more on an approach. I'll be showing some mind mapping that you could use for yourself. So it's going to process then about programs per se. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this subject now is because here we are, almost mid-year, hard to believe. And this is the time of year when things get hard. October is a notoriously challenging month. And we're probably thinking about a lot of problems that are coming up. And we also have a break for the holidays. So it's often a time when we're thinking about some of the problems that we had and looking for how we can make a reset when we come back for the next semester. So I wanted to just give everybody some ideas about how you could strategically pick some new programs you might want to choose, some new instructional strategies in order to help you address some of those needs that you might be facing. Now, eventually, we do want to get to a place where we're going to be coming up with a proactive technology integration plan. And I acknowledge that what I'm talking about now isn't entirely proactive. It's really reacting in some ways to what's happening with our classes right now, but it's also reacting in a strategic way. So we're trying to move away from a place of maybe hearing about a program. Somebody tells you, hey, Nearpod is awesome. Flipgrid is really cool. You should check it out. And just kind of deciding to do that without a real purpose. So the last thing that I'm going to be talking about in the whole mind mapping structure is the tool. We're really going to focus first on identifying the problem, trying to figure out the root causes, gather some evidence that's going to help us understand the problem a little bit better. And then at the very end, think about some different solutions that we might come up with in order to fix that problem. When you're thinking about a problem that you want to address and maybe not entirely fix, but at least improve, I would suggest that you pick something that's relatively impactful. So you want to pick something that is bothering you. You might know right now, immediately when I say that, that something has kind of been digging at you and you have this feeling like, this is just really something I want to wrap my head around or something that I want to fix. That's a great place to start. You want to pick a problem that's high leverage. So it shouldn't be so small and minor that you're not really invested or excited in the process of kind of going through a cycle of inquiry and figuring out how to fix that problem. At the same time, also, maintain expectations of yourself. If your problem is that you have a large group of students that are all reading below grade level, and your goal is to bring 90% of your students up to grade level, and that means increasing their reading score by 2 grade levels. That's a great goal. You can have that, but just also understand that you may not entirely meet that goal. That doesn't mean that you don't want to pursue it, though. So goals should be ambitious. They should be goals that you are invested in legitimately going through a process of improving. And I did mention that when you're identifying a goal, you can kind of think about these subjective measures like something that's bothering you right now. But you should also mix the subjective with some objective pieces of evidence. So I would suggest that to do a really thorough analysis when you're really thinking about how to approach a problem, that you think about some things that come to your mind right away. They might be things that you hear yourself complaining about, that you hear other teachers at your school perhaps just talking about as an issue. And that could be a starting place, but you do want to do some more digging. So I would recommend that you give anonymous surveys. Anonymous surveys are great because people can be more candid. So I would survey students, I would survey families, I would survey other staff members, particularly if you're a school leader. But definitely you want to be looking at some objective metrics when you're coming up with a decision, so that you're not just pulling something out of the air, you're actually pulling something that you're going to work on that's evidence-based. Okay. So today I'm going to model with a problem, and it's a problem that I hear about all the time. And it's kind of a overarching, big, sweeping problem, and that's the problem of student engagement, which perhaps sounds maybe a little bit cliche. I happen to think that's actually so much falls under this umbrella of student engagement, and I hear people talking about it all the time, bringing it up as an issue. And so I wanted to just kind of break it down and look at how we could apply this process of problem solving, coming up with a solution to deal with the problem that we might feel that students are not engaged. So that's what we're going to focus on today. But again, the system of thinking through how you might come up with a solution could be applied to any problem. And there are a lot more issues. You might focus instead on more student achievement as opposed to student engagement. You might pick something like figuring out how to personalize, differentiate instruction for students. Perhaps you might choose a big issue like family engagement. So those would all be really important issues that would merit coming up with a robust solution for those problems. So let's get in, and we're going to, I hear some people saying that I sound low. So sorry, I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. Sorry about that. Hope that wasn't a problem for lots of people. So I'm going to move over to a program called Coggle. And if you haven't used Coggle, Coggle is also a program that I like to use with students. It's a mind mapping tool. And the way that it works, I'm not going to build the whole thing here, but you can essentially just add different arrows and drag them all around. And then you can just continue to add different elements here. So you can change the colors, you can add images by bringing images in. You can also add icons and things like that. So I like using these to make bubble. So I have students make bubble maps with them to show their understanding of concepts. And I like to use it personally as a mind mapping tool. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today. So what I did here is start with my problem in the middle. And I'm actually going to zoom out here and just give you a bigger picture sense of kind of where we're going. So I've started with my problem. And then what I'm doing from there is I'm going to break that problem down. And I want to break the problem down because I really want to pin down the issue. I want to understand when I name a big problem like student achievement, student engagement, family engagement, what exactly am I talking about when I say that term, right? Because it's those are loaded terms. They mean lots of different things. So we're going to start by breaking that problem up. Then we're going to make sure that we have identified some evidence. So we, again, don't just want it to be purely subjective. We need to have some actual evidence that's going to justify us kind of going down this lengthy process of really thinking through problem solving. We want to identify some root causes, and this is where those surveys and the actual data would become more important, because we want to actually drill down and get really specific about, well, what exactly is causing that problem? Because understanding the root cause is going to be the critical component to actually coming up with a solution that can fix it, right? So we don't want to be kind of over here trying to fix some other element of engagement when in fact that has nothing to do with what's actually causing the engagement issues that we're seeing. So engagement, and if you have other suggestions in the chat, I'd love to hear about them. I broke it up into kind of three big bucket categories. And the first is a real tangible objective issue, and that's simply that students are not showing up in class. And I know that that's something that is significantly more of a problem now that schools have gone remote or blended learning. There are lots of people, probably my guess is almost everybody, having some issue with students simply not showing up. So that's one element of engagement. Now, another element of engagement is passive learning. So sometimes when we talk about engagement, what we mean is that students just, they don't seem to be really engaged. They're there, but they're not maybe doing anything, or they're not showing us evidence that they're really engaged with the lessons. Related to that is this issue of students kind of openly seeming like they're not interested. So this is a little bit different than kind of being there but not really participating. This is seeming like they're bored, uninterested, perhaps coming to class but not actually turning in any work. So that would be a kind of another category of disengagement. So let's start here with the first one, which is students not attending class. And evidence for this would be really simple, right? This is attendance record. So students aren't coming to class. That's pretty clear, pretty black and white that they're not showing up. Now, the root causes of a student not attending class could be different, and depending on that root cause would merit a different solution. So one potential solution to students not showing up to class is simply that they're not interested, right? They don't want to come to your class. And in that case, you're going to actually go over here to the students expressing boredom, not being interested branch. So we'll touch on that later. Now, another big issue that's coming up is a logistical issue. I'm hearing this from lots of teachers and families as well, that doing these live synchronous classes, particularly if you're fully remote, is challenging for a variety of reasons. That could be lack of access to a device, or multiple people in a household needing to use a device. It could be just demands going on in the household. There's all kinds of different reasons for that. Now, this kind of problem, if it's a logistical problem, obviously has a totally different solution than students not coming just because they don't want to, right? This is about they're having difficulty actually coming. So we have some different types of solutions that we could come up with here. Now, something that I want to point out here as well is that you might get to this place where you have identified the root cause and you are just looking for solutions, right? That's okay. You might not know yet what the solution is. When you're still learning, developing skills in your practice, this is also a place where you can use it as a jumping off place to do some research. So when I was first learning about different tools and how to use different tools to achieve different purposes, I just had to get to the place where I identified what I wanted to do. And then I was able to go find a tool, find a strategy that could help me with that. So one solution to this logistical problem could be creative scheduling. And a possible tech solution for this would be to kind of blow up your daily schedule. And rather than demanding that all students come at one time for live classes, you could potentially have some students come for a shorter period of time for a live class check-in, push them over to some asynchronous work, and then you could schedule time using the appointment slot scheduler in Google Calendar. In order to do this, you're obviously going to have a little bit more flexibility in how you can construct your day. Another kind of big picture solution is that if a student can't make live class, then we still need to be responsible for providing them with effective instruction. And that would mean that we need to plan effective asynchronous instruction. And effective asynchronous instruction is something that teachers around the world have gotten a whole lot better at, right? Because of school closures. And I think, it's important to think through, if this is a strategy that you're using, what are some different components of effective asynchronous instruction? And are there any elements of it that we could improve? Probably the most important in terms of just foundational is that you're using a learning management system intentionally. If you are at a school where this logistical issue is a challenge across all classrooms, I would highly suggest that you come together and you norm and sync up on your LMS organizational practices. It's a really eye-opening activity if you you go in as a student and you check out 5 different Google Classrooms, and they all look totally different and have different topics and really clearly have no synchronicity. That is very challenging for students. So that's just a foundational issue. Make sure school-wide you have well-organized learning management systems and that you're using the same practices in the way that you set them up. Then you also obviously want to be using some sort of video tutorial program. I like Loom for this purpose, but of course you could use Screencastify. I like Loom just because they offer the pro version for free. Advanced version of making video tutorials would be to put those video tutorials in a program like Edpuzzle so that you can embed some checks for understanding and make that into a more active learning experience. And yeah, I see this question too about Wi-Fi. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then you also want to think through how you're packaging and delivering lessons. So I would recommend if asynchronous instruction is a big component of your teaching, that you really dig into how to build a more dynamic independent study by doing something like a Hyperdoc. Now, if you're less experienced with this, less comfortable with sort of building your own lessons, Nearpod is essentially a program that basically just gives you free, or not, well, free to an extent, right? But they give you pre-built, self-contained Hyperdoc. So those can be great for younger students because they don't have to link manage. And also the lessons are already built for you. They're already sequenced. What I will say about Nearpod, I love Nearpod, but they tend to kind of only take students through the explain phase of a lesson. If you're familiar with the 5 E's lesson sequence that I refer to a lot on my channel, they don't have lessons that are as great for actually applying learning in more authentic ways, but it can be a great place to start if you're looking for how to set up a well-constructed lesson that can be done asynchronously. Now, the more experienced version here is going to be to build your own Hyperdoc. There are lots of tools and guides for how to do that. I have some on my channel. You can also go to the hyperdoc.co website and check out the great work that they're doing over there. And this is just going to be a really important component to making sure that we're not just posting up some worksheets for students to do, that it's actually an intentionally sequenced lesson that is rigorous and engaging. And I think that's even more important if students are learning online and learning in a remote situation. Then, in addition to just the bigger picture sequencing, we would want to be thinking about how we're using these interactive content tools to promote active asynchronous learning. So I know when I started using different multimedia types to have students access information, I would just send my students to a web page, or I would just post a video for them to watch. But that's still a relatively passive learning experience. So some great tools for making that asynchronous content more interactive would be tools like Edpuzzle, which I already mentioned, for interactive video, tools like Actively Learn, which has a huge archive of text that you can make interactive. You can also pull your own text in. They also have an interactive video creator. It's a wonderful program. And Insert Learning is a Google Chrome extension that allows you to turn any web page into an interactive learning experience. So with a combination of 3 tools like these, you can pretty much take any piece of content, make it interactive. It will allow students to monitor their own understanding. It will allow you to check and see whether or not they actually understood what you assigned to them. So highly recommend using those tools as a key critical component for asynchronous learning. Now, let's see. I had a question here. This is a great question that, thanks, Sylvia, that we're not going to be able to fully problem solve this, but of course this is a big issue right now as well, that some students are coming to synchronous teaching, but they're having technical difficulties and slow Wi-Fi, making the lessons totally ineffective. So, this absolutely, if this is a problem, this is something I would put up on mind map and really think through some different potential solutions. Your solution is going to also depend on how much flexibility you have here. So can you do something like have a quick check-in, send kids off to do some asynchronous learning, but then essentially pull small groups by doing something like pulling them into a 4-person Google Meet or Zoom meeting, or schedule a time to meet with them in 15-minute blocks over the next couple of hours, but really, depend on them doing more of the work asynchronously. So that would be potentially an approach that you could take. So in this case, you're really going to need to think through, when you're flipping instruction, when you're having the instruction happen asynchronously, what is the most important thing for you to do when you do have those students live and they're all together with you? There might be, because of the Wi-Fi issues, some activities you just can't do. So you'll have to identify, well, what can you do and what's important that you do all together? And then what are some of the components that you can push offline or push into an asynchronous environment? All right. Now, the last component here of effective asynchronous instruction that I think sometimes gets a little bit overshadowed or lost is parent education. As we know, if we're going to ask students to do a lot of the learning kind of independently, it's not always fully independent, right? That their parents are also going to need to support them. And I think here is a great opportunity to really think outside the box in terms of how we're supporting parents with being able to support their students. And virtual tech nights can be a good option for this. So virtual tech night would look like essentially an hour every other week, every month, every quarter, whatever you and your team was able to pull off. And it would involve getting parents into the programs that you're using, showing them, how to use Google Classroom, showing them some of the primary tools that you use, and really explaining to them what's going on, because they're probably looking at a lot of the work and they just, it's hard for them to make sense of it. So that can be a great way to build trust and also build parent confidence so that they're able to better support their students at home and make that asynchronous learning experience a little bit more effective. All right. Next issue that actually I'm going to look here really quickly through the comments. So yeah, Shauna is mentioning Nearpod having the same feature like Edpuzzle, and Shauna, I believe you're referring to interactive video. It is true, and I'm all for using the interactive video tool in Nearpod. It is slightly less functional. You can't set up the Nearpod interactive video unless they changed this recently. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, you can't set it up so that students can't scrub through the video. Whereas with Edpuzzle, you can set it up so that they actually cannot move the video forward. It essentially forces them to answer the question. That's also a feature of Actively Learn. They cannot scroll past your question. They have to answer it. Whereas a program like Insert Learning, they can go back past that question. So I like the functionality of Edpuzzle. I love Nearpod too, but particularly for asynchronous interactive video, I do still like Edpuzzle. All right, let's jump over here to another problem, or I'm sorry, another element of engagement, and that's passive learning. So oftentimes when people are talking about not, seeing students engaged, they're meaning that students might be showing up to class, and this could be remote or in person, but they're not actively participating, meaning that maybe they're just sitting there, right? So maybe they're not sharing, or they're just not participating, right? So that's another issue that we need to get to the root cause of. And this is one where it would actually be a good idea to have somebody else observe you if that's something that you're open to. I know that it's something that requires a little bit of risk taking, but it can sometimes be very hard to analyze our own practice. And if you have a third party observer, they can just collect some data. They can give you some feedback. The reason why students are not participating can vary significantly. They can be more student-based and they can be more teacher behavior-based. So the more student-oriented reasons are going to be, that students are shy. They don't like to, share out loud in a class. Maybe students don't understand what you're teaching, and so they feel, scared to share. The more teacher-oriented one are going to be more around teacher actions. So this would be teachers, for example, only asking for volunteer-based participation. So saying things to the class like, who knows X, Y, or Z, right? And that's going to inherently limit the people who choose to participate. It's only going to be a certain student who openly makes that decision to do that. And oftentimes, I know that I've been guilty of this. Oops, sorry, I left this comment on there. Myself, many times, is that teachers are often only asking students to participate using limited modalities. And often this is verbal, right? So we're asking students, and I see it in being replicated in Zoom and Google Meet all the time, where we're still asking students to share something out verbally, or maybe asking them to put something in the chat. So it's still relatively limited to just verbal share outs and writing. And of course, if you don't feel comfortable sharing out verbally, then you might not want to do that. And if you have any, issue with your typing, or, you're self-conscious about spelling, anything like that, then you might not participate in that way. So there's this one I like because there's one really effective solution that can touch on all of these root causes together. And that is to elicit 100% participation from students with some of these whole group interactivity tools. And this is also a place where I would suggest mixing it up. And I'm going to talk about mixing it up in a little bit. But if you've been using Pear Deck a lot, or you've been using Nearpod a lot, and you feel like it's kind of getting a little bit tired, I would recommend checking out another tool. There's benefit in the nuance, particularly when you're coming back for another year. I would highly suggest bringing in something totally new. If you haven't already used one of these 100% participation tools, these are game changers. They will allow you to achieve what I think is, at least for me, was always an elusive goal, a goal that I was told I needed to get. But without a tech tool, I'm not quite sure how you get 100% participation, maybe with mini whiteboards. But tech tools are really effective for being able to hear from every single student, every, pretty much every single time you ask a question. So great tools: Pear Deck, Nearpod, Slido, Mentimeter, Formative, and ClassKick are a little bit more advanced tools, but I love those tools. And personal favorite, Padlet, and also Google Jamboard. So these are all great ways of having all students respond to a question at the same time. Now, they have other benefits too. So if your student's issue is actually around lack of understanding here, using these tools isn't necessarily going to tackle their lack of understanding. That's kind of out of the purview of this discussion today. But what it will allow you to do is better understand what students understand and what they don't know. If students just aren't talking, they aren't participating, you might actually not know what the problem is. But if you start to see significant lack of understanding by using some of these formative assessment tools, then you will have a much better sense of whether or not it's the confusion that's really driving those issues there. And the other compelling reason to use these tools is that it allows students to respond with multiple means of interacting. So this could be potentially audio, drawing, could be multiple choice questions, could be text-based, and they can do so in a relatively low risk environment. Lots of the programs have the option to post anonymously so other students don't see who's responding. You could see who it is, but other students wouldn't. And so they're ways of eliciting responses from students without asking them to take a risk, which for some students can be a huge risk, right, of speaking up in front of the class. And this is one thing I can say: I guarantee you, if you use these tools, these interactive tools, you will see a massive increase in student engagement across the board. I'm always consistently blown away by the percentage increase that I can get with my own students and working with other teachers when you start bringing these tools in. So if you haven't tried these, this could be a great area of focus for your reset. Okay, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to look through some of the questions. And if you're just joining about halfway through right now, we today are talking about strategic problem solving with education technology. I'm Sam Carey of the new EdTech Classroom, and also mentioned at the beginning of the show that I do these live shows every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I also am offering some coaching to schools, particularly school leaders who are interested in developing and implementing a strategic technology integration plan. So if you're a coach, if you're a department chair, if you're an AP, if you're a principal, if you work at a district and you're interested in taking a deep dive looking at how to come up with a strategic instructional technology plan, then I'd love to chat with you. The link to be able to book a call with me is in the video description, and it's also just at newedtechschool.com. Okay, so couple of comments here. One is from Peter. Peter's asking whether or not it's possible to have too many tools in the kit. Yes and no. So I would say if you're just kind of willy-nilly throwing stuff up on the wall, that it can definitely be the case that it's, kind of like wasteful or ineffective. Like there's like a curve where you're throwing so many tools at students that they're no longer effective. I think what's most important is that you're not just introducing something new for no particular reason. And also, I would avoid introducing something new until students have demonstrated mastery with another tool, or you've seen that tool that you've been using just isn't really working all that well. But I do think variety is important, and I would caution against also going the other direction and saying, like, I'm going to do every single lesson in Nearpod for the entire year. That's also probably not going to be all that effective. So there's definitely a happy medium there. Thanks for the question, Peter. And yeah, there's a question here. Katie is also recommending Parlay. I agree. Parlay is a effective tool, particularly for discussion and peer-to-peer collaboration. So if discussion is something that you're trying to foster, particularly online, which can be challenging to get students to interact with each other, Parlay is a good tool for that. Kialo is an effective tool for that as well, particularly for debates and discussions and academic conversations. So thanks, Katie, for that suggestion. Okay, the last element here that I'm going to talk about engagement, go over here, is this other big issue of student engagement, and that's that students at least are showing on the outside that they don't seem interested, and that might show up as they're not doing the work. They might, be kind of showing us signs that they're bored, that they don't want to be there. And again, this is slightly different from this issue of kind of being there but being passive, maybe being shy, maybe the learning modalities aren't really working for them. This is more like active. I'm not that interested. I'm bored. And these are the ones I always like. I love cracking these cases and investing students and getting them to want to be there. So some evidence of this being your problem could be that students are actively telling you, they're saying to you, why do I have to be here? If you teach middle school, I'm sure you've heard this. Why is this important? I'm bored, right? So that's pretty clear. They're telling you. Students may not be completing their work. That of course could be a sign that they're just kind of disinvested. Heads down, right? Sleeping in class. That's a possibility. They may also just be tired, but it's a potential signal of disinvestment. Misbehaviors are also often a outward sign indicating to you that you've got some students that are displaying lack of interest, boredom with what you're teaching. Now, root causes can be quite different here, and really we could actually probably spend an entire show just talking about this issue. It's a huge one. One root cause is maybe more on your end in terms of the lessons that you're delivering. Maybe, and this is something where you really have to kind of be honest with yourself here, or have somebody else observe you and be open to their honesty. Maybe the lessons you're delivering aren't that interesting, and that's why students aren't interested. Maybe they're kind of this more traditional lecture and notes format, and that's just not really playing out well with students. This could also be the case. This lessons needing to be more interesting could be the problem if you haven't mixed things up for a while. So I mentioned, if you're using Nearpod just over and over and over and over again, it might have been fun and interesting initially, but 20th time, not so much so. So it also might just be that you need to mix things up, and things have gotten stale. And that's also something I know I've been very guilty of in the past. Another big one for students is they're feeling like they lack agency. And this would be students feeling like school has been imposed upon them, feeling like they really want to be able to express autonomy and have freedom and choice, but they feel restricted. And that's kind of causing them to, have this angst and feel like they're forced to be there. They might, of course, have difficulty accessing the material. That's actually something I'm not going to talk about today just because the issue of remediating skills, differentiating instruction, improving, rigor is kind of a whole other potential show, right, that we could do. But of course, that could be an issue that they're displaying misbehaviors or they're displaying behaviors that they're not interested because they're actually having difficulty with the content. They're not understanding it. Oftentimes, students are also, particularly if you teach any students past the age of 11, more interested in peer-to-peer interactions, and they're really motivated by that, and less so than the interactions that they're having with their teacher. So lots of different potential root causes for students being bored or not interested. Now, let's say you're in this one, which I think actually everybody could use some mixing it up. And, it's good to actively and proactively think about how we can do this and bring in some new and interesting things, and becomes even more important as the school year, progresses, as students become more comfortable and they learn your systems and structures. It starts getting comfortable. That's when I know it's time to mix it up. So there are lots of ways to mix it up. I just have a couple of suggestions here that I found to be particularly effective. So one is, if you haven't already, to start experimenting with some gamification. Quiz is like Kahoot, if you've used Kahoot. Both of those are just more simple gamification tools that can, turn review into competitions, things like that. They also have more elaborate gamification tools. These are not so much competition games, but actually immersive learning experience type games. And one is Minecraft EDU, and another is Prodigy if you're a math teacher. And students love both of these programs. They'll be begging to play them like during their free time. If you are interested in checking out good games to use, I would highly recommend checking out Common Sense's website. They have lists of recommended apps and games that you can play that are educational. So this, if something that you haven't done, you bring this in. This can definitely bring some excitement into your class. Another strategy is to mix up the way that students start exploring content. And so here you're going to have to do an analysis of how you are having students explore content. If it's primarily text-based, then if you start bringing in your own video tutorials, you start, bringing in some Edpuzzle YouTube videos, crash course videos, things like that, that's, going to add an element of engagement. But if you've kind of already done those, you could also push yourself to think about some more advanced tech ways of engaging students with the content. Two programs that I love for this, they're both smartphone apps, so you would have to be able to get students to use smartphones, are Google Expeditions and Merge. Merge has all kinds of VR and augmented reality apps that are educational. They have little snap-in VR headsets. I used to have like a class set, half class set of them that you can buy for like $5, little plastic ones. And you can send kids on a virtual reality field trip to a museum, or they can look at, a cell in virtual reality or augmented reality. They can visit, I taught ancient civilizations, so they can visit China on a virtual field trip on their phone. So it's just another fun tool that you can bring in, but also something that is really useful for building schema, for getting students to develop a better understanding of a concept that they might not be able to really wrap their heads around. So if you have the means, the ability to bring in something like virtual reality, augmented reality, that can also be a great way to mix it up. And a huge category that, if you haven't taken on yet, that I would definitely recommend, is to start looking at ways that you can bring in creativity apps to have students show understanding. So if you're still kind of in a place where you're having students do more traditional assessments like quizzes, essays, presentations, you can still keep those. But I would also start to look for some places where you can have students apply what they know with some authentic learning experiences that have them actually applying what they're learning with using a tech tool. And so this could be students making a podcast, could mean with a program like Soundtrap, could be students making digital books with Book Creator, digital comics with Storyboard That. They could make graphic designs with Canva or Adobe Spark. Those programs also allow students to make web pages, to make videos. They can make more advanced videos in a program like WeVideo, or iMovie. And if you're interested in starting to bring some of this stuff in, what I would do is look at look at some units that you have coming up, and just think about how you could have students show what they know by doing something different, right? So maybe you've in the past had them do a presentation. Well, rather than a presentation that's a more traditional presentation where they're just speaking in front of the class, or rotating and presenting on Zoom, could you have them make a video presentation in a program like Adobe Spark? So that's just one small example. And these are also, just like with interactivity tools, pretty much a guaranteed hit in terms of boosting engagement and excitement. I think students really understand when you have them use these tools that these transcend your individual class. They learn how to do audio recording and editing and make a podcast. Students understand that they're doing something important and cool and relevant, and that they're building a life skill that they can potentially use well beyond your class. So highly recommend checking out some different creativity apps to bring in. Now down here, we have another root cause, and that's that perhaps students feel a lack of agency. They're expressing like, I feel like I'm trapped. I feel like I don't get to, I have no ability to, choose what I want to do. And lots of students are highly motivated by choice. And sometimes that can also just be the perception of choice. And I say perception of choice because sometimes it can be scary to give students like fully open-ended work. And I don't necessarily suggest that right away. But what I do suggest is that you try using choice boards for controlled choice. So you can control elements of what a student can choose. So for example, if they're learning about a particular topic, you can have them choose how they're going to learn that information. So you can give them a choice board with access to all articles or videos, web pages that you've already selected that are good to use, but they get to choose which ones they want to go to. They could also choose how they're going to show what they know. So if you've taught them a bunch of creativity apps, then they could choose, I'm going to make a podcast to show you what I learned here, or I'm going to make a graphic design. And you could even turn it into like a bingo sheet where they have to do a certain number of them and they can't repeat old ones. So that's controlled choice. Genius Hour is more of an open choice time. I do typically, when I do Genius Hour, tend to control one very general generic variable. So for example, I do things with my students like Women's History Month, for example. And Genius Hour is an hour in the week where students basically have open freedom, and they can do anything related in some capacity to Women's History Month. So they might, be researching somebody who's currently alive who they think is going to be an important historical figure, or is now or will be in the future, or they could research an important historical figure in the past, and then they can choose what they're going to learn about that person. They can choose how they're going to show that learning. So Genius Hour is much more open-ended. And then the next one, which I also recommend trying out, particularly if you're an English teacher, if you have students read books, a great way to kind of give students a little bit more of a perception that they have choice is to allow them to choose the next book. You can have them vote from some books that you've selected. If you have more advanced skills, you can also have them potentially even pick books that they would read, and then read those in literature circles as well. But you can have them do something like pick the next book. You maybe know that you have a few books you're gonna read, and they get to choose the next one. You can also have them give you some feedback about a tool that they want to learn about. So if you're building in creativity apps, sometimes it doesn't matter that much. Like, are we going to have students make a podcast for this particular unit, or are we going to have them make a web page or make a video? It's not super important, right? What's more important is that they're showing the content understanding. So sometimes you can also have students vote, which I like to do at the semester. Hey, I have all these programs and all these really cool projects that I want to do with you. Which ones do you want to learn how to do? And give them that sense of autonomy and agency there as well. So these are they seem like maybe, not as important perhaps, but I can definitely tell you from experience how important it is for young people to feel like they have the ability to choose and have some control over what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be learning about. And it can be a great way to invest students who are a little bit less invested in your class. And last one here that I'm going to talk about is students who are more interested in peer-to-peer interactions. So we've all had these students. These are students who they either socialize a lot in class, or they are highly motivated by peer feedback and by impressing their peers. And this one is actually, in some ways, a good problem to have because you can really lean on this and turn it into something productive. So this is something that you're facing, you think this is your root cause, then one thing to do is just to create more opportunities for social sharing. And what I mean here is really starting to shift the culture away from students just producing work for you and students producing work for the whole class. So this is a great way to get students who want that positive feedback, and but maybe they're kind of so-so about whether or not they want to do the work. If they have to share it with their peers, if it gets posted, on a class website, if they have to put it up on Padlet and they're all commenting on each other's work, that can be a huge motivating factor for some students. So if that's an issue with some of your students, I would definitely recommend trying to lean into that and take advantage of that. And then, of course, you can also just create more opportunities for peer-to-peer support. So these could be structured collaborative groups. You could also use a program like ClassKick, which I mentioned as a whole group interactivity tool. ClassKick will allow you to pair students up, and students can also request help and get that help from other students. So it's also kind of a decentralizing tool, and can be effective if you're looking for ways to bring more peer-to-peer support. And that can be a way to channel that energy into something productive and positive. This one is really sad for me. I just got an email, maybe some of you did as well if you've been a member of Skype EDU, that Skype EDU is going away soon. But Skype EDU it's still available now, but it won't be in the future. However, Skype EDU is a program that allows you to connect with other classes around the world. And they were doing all this, pre-school closure where you could coordinate with another class through Google Meet or I guess Skype, and you could do a project together or do these like mystery activities where you're trying to guess where the other classroom is located, giving you clues. And they have all these structured activities that you can do with other classes around the world. So these types of opportunities as well, if students are really interested in those peer-to-peer interactions, using technology to connect with other classrooms, to bring in guest speakers. So I've done things in the past like bring in the author of the book that we are reading. Harder maybe to get that person to come in person, but they can join a Zoom class. So looking for ways to connect with other classes, and again, just using that desire to talk with their peers, to impress their peers to your advantage. Okay, so this is my mind mapping tool or my mind mapping process, I should say, for strategically solving problems with education technology. And again, just want to emphasize, notice where the tools were, right? The tools were toward the end. We weren't starting with, hey, look at this cool, shiny, nice new tool. We were really trying to go down the process of figuring out how to really focus in on a problem and come up with a strategic solution to that problem. This is going to have the benefit, if you're an individual teacher, of uh, kind of giving you a boost, scoring a win, even if you don't fully tackle the engagement issue. If you really focus on a targeted piece of engagement, you will see some success with it, and it's going to give you a boost. And those, I think, are much needed. If you are a school leader, this is a key component to investing teachers, and but I think showing teachers how a strategic plan, strategically using tech tools and tech infused strategies can really help us tackle some of these bigger issues that we're facing. And if you want to get to a place where you're really building a 21st century school, you have all these really proactive, innovative, forward-thinking strategies that you want to put in place. It's going to be really important that you have teachers bought into that. And this can be a great step for getting you to that place where you get to put that more proactive plan in place. So it's been great talking about this with everybody. I hope that you got some ideas for how to strategically come up with a plan and use some tech tools and tech infused strategies to solve some issues that you're having. So I'm going to go through some of the comments right now. There's a lot of them, so I apologize that I won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to see some questions and comments and see what I can answer here. Okay, this is a great question, Adriana. Thank you. That is incredibly important, and I will do a show about in the future as well, because this is also a category, differentiating instruction, personalizing instruction, where, similar to what I was saying about an interactivity tool, I think that technology can help us in ways that help us achieve things that we simply could not do without a tech tool. So there's all kinds of ways that you can implement differentiation virtually, whether that's, there are real kind of nuts and bolts things you can do, like assigning different assignments to students through Google. I would also highly recommend, I don't know what subject you teach, but most subjects, require students to read in some way. So I would highly recommend using a tool that auto differentiates texts so that you can have all students reading the same content, but at their Lexile level. So that's a good place to start if you're a math teacher that is targeting some specific skill development that they need. So those are just two quick ideas, but definitely a very important issue, and one that again, I think technology can really support us here. All right. Using a pen with Jamboard, and Cecilia, I'm kind of interpreting it. You might have a question up top here. So I did actually just found this out recently. If you have, and now I'm blanking on the name of it, but if you have a plug-in tablet that allows you to, like a plug-in scribble pad, you will be able to use that with a tool like Jamboard or Whiteboard-Fi. So essentially any of the tools that allow you to openly scribble, you can use an external plug-in stylus on a tablet. You will not be able to do that on something like Google Slides, though. That's a question I get a lot, and that's because it's not an open template where you can just openly draw on it. So you would still only be able to do that with a program like Jamboard, but you can do that with the web-based version as long as you have that external tool? So that's a great question. Okay. So yeah, just lots of people thanking me. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate all the positive feedback. It's been really great to hear from everybody. And let's see, I have one last question. Shauna, I'll pull you in here. This looks like a suggestion more than a question, but splitting a class, half who understand the concept do a group project in breakout rooms. The other half are getting tutored on Nearpod. So yeah, I love this idea, and I love that you're open here to experimenting, to trying some different strategies. To have some students doing some live synchronous instruction, then setting something up that's strategic that students would be doing in an asynchronous way. Just great, effective ways to be using some of these tools and strategies to make sure that we're meeting the learning needs of students. And, just the way things are looking right now, where I know some school districts are backing out of their plans to reopen or have already decided to do that, just think it's even more important that we're continuing to try to push ourselves to do new and innovative things, and get outside of our comfort zone a little bit for the sake of making sure that students are continuing to get the awesome educations that they deserve. So great to see everybody here, and everybody, if you're here, you're clearly invested in growing your teaching practice. So again, before I close out, time on Thursdays, I will be off next week, obviously, for Thanksgiving. And also let you know that if you are a school leader, if you're an assistant principal, instructional coach, department chair, or you work at a district, and you're interested in getting some more support with developing and implementing a strategic technology integration plan, I'd love to chat with you. The link to be able to book a call is in the video description. I'll also put it in the pinned comment. It is newedtechschool.com, and I will drop that in here again as well for the live conversation. So thank you so much. And as always, if you have any requests for live shows, I have planned live shows in the past around those requests. So I'd love to hear what you feel like you need to learn, because I want to make sure that this is targeted and relevant for everybody. So have a great evening and enjoy the holiday.